The Spellbinders September clubs are now available. Hi everyone, I'm Rebecca Keppel, and in today's video, I'll be sharing a whole bunch of the September Spellbinders club kits so that you can see the ones that maybe you don't subscribe to and decide if you want to pick them up. This month's kits are filled with fall themes, from pumpkins to gourds to leaves and much more. So let's dive right into the card making because I have a lot of cards to share today, and I'll let you know what new clubs I'm using as we go. Let's start with the stitching die of the month. It is a beautiful large sunflower. You can see all the pieces that I've already cut out, and now I've done some stitching. So one of the flowers I cut just plain, one I cut with the holes, and then I stitched it up. These are very simple stitches, so I didn't want to bore you with them, but if you ever have questions about the stitching die, please just let me know. They're very simple. This is the embossing folder of the month, and I love that pattern. I think it looks great on white cardstock, but I know it's harder to see, so I also did some cosmic sky, and it just, even though it's not the 3D embossing folder, it really gives you very fine detail, and I think this is a great background for tons of different cards. So I'm adhering the stem of the sunflower first on one of those embossed backgrounds, and then I'll take my doubled up sunflower so that each of the petals is next to each other and there's no gaps in between them, and I'll place that on top. You can see there was a circle at the top of the stem. That's where you place the flower. There's a die that cuts out the center of the flower. I cut that out of gold glitter cardstock. Then I have both of the leaves, again, very simple stitching. This took me no time at all to stitch up, so this is a really fun one to have. I also stitched the very center of the flower in a crosshatch pattern. This is the Glimmer kit of the month. You can see it's a very large thanks that can be die cut, as well as some sub-sentiments. So I have one of those thanks that I glimmered in rose gold, and I'll just adhere a little bit of liquid adhesive behind that thanks script and place it right at the bottom of my sunflower. This is such a big, bold impact card, and the stitching adds some really fine homespun touch to it. It is just so fun to put together, and I think this is great for a thank you card. Next up, we have the stencil of the month. This is a layering stencil this month. All of the stencils layer on top of each other. So I am creating a kind of fun color combination with my pumpkins. First, I used saltwater taffy Distress Oxide ink. Then I used spun sugar, and now I'll use an orange color as well. So really small shader brushes from Waffle Flower get into each of those individual openings of the stencil and make it really easy to create a multicolor background. I have everything down on my Waffle Flower grip mat as well that holds the cardstock and the stencil in place, and I don't have to tape everything down or worry about it shifting on me. Now I have a little bit of tea dye Distress Oxide ink for the stems of those pumpkins, and I just love these colors for the fall. Sometimes I get a little overwhelmed with all the darkness of the fall and holiday colors, and so I like to do a card like this. It sort of brightens things up, and it's just a fresh way to think about fall colors. I have the clear stamp end dies, which I'll share with you later, but I did want to use one of the sentiments just to stamp right on top of those pumpkins with some VersaFine Black Onyx ink, which is a pigment ink and shows up beautifully on top of Distress Oxide. Next up, I have the 3D embossing folder of the month. I have a little piece of paper in there just so you can see the design. Really pretty pumpkins and flowers, sunflowers again. So I did white, of course, and then some yellow cardstock as well as a really deep orange cardstock. It's a great pattern, and this is definitely a very fall themed background. Next, I have the wax seal of the month. It comes with an autumn mix of wax beads, and for this first spoonful, I did one of each of the colors, and I think I did 2 golds so that I could have enough wax to pour out an oval, because this month's wax seal stamp is an oval stamp. So you want to make sure you have enough wax down on the silicone mat that you'll be able to get the entire impression of the image, which is actually an image of fall leaves. I love this mix of colors, but you can definitely play around with it and just grab, say, 2 of the colors. So don't think that you have to use every single color every single time. You can mix that gold and red, which is really pretty, and they make a nice marbleized look. In the next batch, I have the greens, blues, and the golds together. So just have some fun playing with those color combinations. Just make sure, like I mentioned, that you pour enough wax out that you can really stamp the entire seal. The reason there's so much soot on my silicone mat this time is because I bought new tea lights and they're higher, and so they keep burning the bottom of the spoon. So if you're having issues with soot, it might be that your tea lights are a little too high like mine, but it's okay. It can clean off sort of and it doesn't transfer onto anything. I'll use a little bit of gold paint pen to make those leaves really stand out. Now I have that 3D embossed background with those pumpkins. I'm using a little bit of Catherine Pooler's terracotta ink, and I'm just inking the edges pretty much. I could totally go over the entire cardstock, but I wanted that gradient of color between yellow and then kind of a reddish hue on the outside and a little bit of orange where I'm going slightly into the center. I've also cut out a little dome that I can stamp my sentiment on. It says hello, and I tied some gold thread behind it. Now I did have to hold the gold thread around the back in place with some Spellbinders tape because it kept sliding off the top of the dome, which I hadn't really thought through, I guess. But if you tape it down, then you can knot it, and then you can place your wax seal on top. Now, this is the wax seal circular adhesive. I love these. They make it super easy to adhere the wax seals. This way you don't have to pour it out on your project and possibly mess up. So I like to do them separately and then adhere them on top. And then I'll just stack those domed shapes. And I also decided to tie some of the gold thread around the card itself because really the wax seal was kind of covering up a lot of the gold thread on the little domed shape there. I'll use a couple of foam adhesive squares to pop up that shape with the wax seal and the sentiment. And this way, that's a very autumn colored card, like traditional colors, totally different than my stenciled card, but I love both. And it's nice to have the opportunity to create in both color combinations. Here, I'm actually taking the embossed 3D background, cutting it down to 4 by 5 1/4, and then using some white pigment ink from Altenew on top. And for me, the thing with this is to go lightly at first. You can always add more white ink, but it's very hard to take it away. So I start out very, very light, and then I see where I want a darker or more of the white on there. I'm using some of that gold thread again to tie around that card panel, and I'll place that on the back of a piece that I cut out a bunch of stuff out of. And then I'll place that wax seal right on top, and I'll use the stamp set again to stamp a sub-sentiment that says Autumn Wishes, and I'll use a little liquid adhesive to adhere that down. Definitely want liquid adhesive there on top of pigment ink. Make sure that it really stays stuck. So easy to put these together with all of the elements from the different kits. how they coordinate together so well. So these are two of the images from the clear stamp and die of the month, and I have some Olo markers. I've talked a little bit about them before. I haven't really gone into depth with them because I am still practicing, trying them out. I don't have a ton of them, so I'm really just trying to get the hang of them. I do like how smooth the brush is and how well the ink flows. It definitely makes it nice and easy to blend colors out. So I like to just pop them into videos every once in a while just to let you know that I am still trying to figure out whether or not I want to recommend them because they're new to me. And even though they weren't sent to me, I don't want to just throw something at you and not even know how to use it myself. So I have a couple of dies from the die set to cut out both of these images. So I'll just hold those dies in place with some of the Spellbinders tape so that I can run them through my platinum machine. Next, I'll take one of the sentiments. This one says Happy Thanksgiving. There's also a die to cut that out, which I love. I love when there are some dies for the sentiments because then you can pop them up. The background I'm using is the embossing folder that I did on white cardstock, and I'll just pop up both the images. One I'm using at the bottom left-hand corner and one at the top right. I felt like these both fit into corners perfectly, and so I really liked the idea of creating those as the images and then the sentiment right in the center between them. And then you can still see all of that texture from the embossing folder. And that's why I really love embossing folders. It doesn't have to be the star of the show, although those pumpkins I think really are, but it can just add some nice subtle texture to your background and it creates a little bit of interest. And here again, some bright colors, but also some pastels and a lot of white, which I don't typically use in the autumn, but I'm really liking this year. This is the better press of the month. You can see there are a bunch of leaves. There's a registration acetate piece. There are 3 sentiments better press plates and 1 die to cut them out. So if you haven't used one of these acetate pieces before, you're going to tape it down onto your magnetic surface. So I have a couple of pieces of tape around the acetate, and then of course I taped down my cardstock, which is the cotton press. Now there are 3 different colors of leaves, outline leaves. You can do them in any order you want. What they recommend is that each outline color is a different color of ink. Doesn't matter what order you do them in. So I started with several leaves in the tawny color and now I'm using the coastal color. The one thing to remember is to keep the cardstock on your clear plate until you're fully done with all of the different colors. So it will stay in place. The press plates will come off and new plates will go down for each color. And you could really do as many colors as you want, but I like their formulation and how they have it set up. So I did it pretty close to their colors just to see how it would turn out. And this is a really pretty color combination. I like that a lot. So I've also decided to better press all 3 of the sentiments on one piece of cardstock. This time I'm just using black for these, but of course you can use any color that you like. And then I will cut them out with that coordinating die because that makes it a really easy sentiment strip that you can just add to that better press background, and that's it. That's what I love about the better press, is that you can create a really stunning card in just a couple of steps. And it is so much fun to play around with and change the color combination. For this next card, I have the 3D embossed background, and I'm ink blending over the white cardstock with Catherine Pooler Bellini ink. And it is a really pretty orange. Again, let's go for some traditional colors and have fun with it a little bit. So once I have my complete orange background, I decided to yellow up the flowers a little bit. They are some sunflowers, and I thought just a little bit of yellow ink on top of that inked background would look pretty. I'm also using this same mustard seed ink on the Glimmer Thanks sentiment that I did die cut, just so that it doesn't look too stark with white cardstock. And then I have For Lending a Hand at the bottom. That's one of those sub-sentiments from the Glimmer kit of the month, which is really nice to have. Thanks is always a good one to have in your stash. Even though I'm not enjoying fall weather right now, I am so excited to be crafting with fall themed supplies, but I'd love to hear if anything caught your eye from this month's release. Let me know in the comments below. As always, I want to thank you so much for stopping by and spending time with me today. Please stay safe, stay healthy, and I'll see you again soon. Does that sound weird? I feel like some of the words were like a little clipped and sounded weird, but you know what? We're just gonna go with it because I don't have a lot of patience right now.